Regional allies of the U.S. are also watching closely. Stability in the Middle East directly impacts global energy markets and international security. Any breakdown in talks could escalate tensions beyond Iran and Washington, affecting trade routes and geopolitical alliances important to American economic interests. Iran's message appears carefully crafted for both domestic and international audiences. Internally, it projects strength and independence. Externally, it challenges Western pressure. For U.S. viewers, this illustrates how political messaging often serves multiple purposes during sensitive diplomatic moments. Experts warn that aggressive language on either side can limit diplomatic flexibility. While talks continue behind closed doors, public statements may harden positions. American policymakers must weigh strong deterrence against the need to keep dialogue alive to avoid unintended escalation. The nuclear issue remains central to Iran's relations with the West. Sanctions, relief, economic recovery, and regional influence all hinge on these discussions for the United States. The outcome could define its broader strategy toward the Middle East in the coming years. Public opinion in America is divided. Some support firm pressure on Iran, while others favor renewed agreements to reduce risks. This debate reflects broader questions about U.S. leadership, diplomacy, and military involvement abroad in an increasingly complex global environment. Iran's refusal to surrender echoes decades of revolutionary rhetoric. However, analysts note that strong language does not always mean closed doors and behind the scenes. Negotiators may still search for compromises acceptable to both sides, keeping hopes for progress alive. Tensions between the United States and Iran are once again capturing global attention as Tehran issues a strong statement during renewed nuclear discussions. Iranian leaders insist they will not surrender under pressure, signaling a hard stance that could reshape diplomacy for American audiences. This moment highlights growing uncertainty in Middle East security. Iran's declaration comes amid indirect nuclear talks aimed at limiting uranium enrichment and restoring international trust. While diplomacy remains open, Tehran's rhetoric suggests resistance to demands viewed as unfair. U.S. officials continue emphasizing non-proliferation, making the negotiations a delicate balancing act watched closely in Washington. Former President Donald Trump's influence still looms large over U.S.-Iran relations. Iranian officials often reference past sanctions and pressure campaigns when rejecting compromise. For American viewers, this underscores how previous foreign policy decisions continue shaping current global tensions and negotiations at the highest levels. Iran argues that its nuclear program is peaceful and essential for national sovereignty. Western nations, however, remain concerned about enrichment levels and transparency. This clash of narratives fuels mistrust and keeps diplomats cautious. The situation demonstrates how security concerns and political pride collide on the world stage. The United States maintains that preventing nuclear weapons development is a core national interest. Officials stress that diplomacy is preferred over conflict, yet Iran's firm language raises questions about whether negotiations can progress without concessions, leaving American analysts divided on the best path forward. The Biden administration, like previous governments, faces a difficult challenge. It must reassure allies, enforce international norms, and avoid conflict. Iran's statements test Washington's resolve and diplomatic skill at a time when global stability feels increasingly fragile. Media coverage in the U.S. highlights the risks of miscalculation. History shows that misunderstandings can quickly spiral into confrontation. This is why careful diplomacy and clear communication remain critical. Even when public statements sound confrontational, Iran insists sanctions and pressure tactics have failed to change its core policies. U.S. officials counter that economic measures bring Iran to the negotiating table. This disagreement reflects contrasting views on power, persuasion, and international relations. For American audiences, this story is about more than nuclear talks. It touches on global leadership, national security, and the role of diplomacy in preventing war. Every statement from Tehran or Washington sends ripples through international markets and alliances. Military options remain a sensitive topic. While no side openly seeks conflict, increased tensions raise concerns about accidents or missteps. U.S. defense officials emphasize readiness while also supporting diplomatic solutions to reduce long-term risks. Iran's regional influence adds another layer of complexity. Its relationships with neighboring countries and non-state actors affect U.S. strategic calculations. Any nuclear agreement or collapse of talks could reshape power dynamics across the Middle East. International organizations continue monitoring Iran's nuclear activities. Transparency and inspections are key demands from Western nations. Iran's cooperation levels will play a major role in determining whether talks move forward or stall indefinitely. Economic consequences are also significant. Oil prices often react to Middle East tensions. For U.S. consumers, instability can translate into higher fuel costs, linking distant diplomacy directly to everyday life. Iran's messaging strategy appears aimed at strengthening its negotiating position. By projecting confidence, Tehran signals it will not accept terms perceived as one-sided. This approach complicates efforts to reach a mutually acceptable compromise. U.S. allies in Europe play an important mediating role. Their diplomatic efforts help keep channels open between Washington and Tehran. Cooperation among Western nations remains essential for any effective agreement. Despite harsh words, diplomacy often progresses slowly. Breakthroughs typically come after prolonged discussions. American experts caution against judging outcomes based solely on public statements, emphasizing patience and strategic thinking. The global community understands the stakes. Preventing nuclear proliferation remains a shared goal. How the U.S. and Iran navigate this moment could set a precedent for future negotiations with other nations. Iran's stance challenges U.S. policymakers to balance strength with flexibility. Excessive pressure risks collapse of talks, while excessive compromise risks political backlash at home. This tightrope defines modern American foreign policy. Public trust also matters. Americans expect transparency and accountability in international agreements. Clear communication from leaders helps maintain support for diplomatic efforts that may take years to show results. Media framing influences public perception. Responsible reporting avoids exaggeration while explaining real risks. For U.S. audiences, understanding context is essential to forming informed opinions about foreign policy decisions. Iran's nuclear pledge reminds the world that diplomacy is rarely straightforward. Competing interests, historical grievances, and domestic politics all shape negotiations. This complexity explains why progress often feels slow and uncertain. As talks continue, the possibility of compromise remains. History shows that even bitter rivals can reach agreements under the right conditions. Whether this moment leads to progress or renewed tension remains to be seen. Ultimately, this developing story reflects broader global challenges. Power, security, and diplomacy intersect in unpredictable ways. For American viewers, staying informed is crucial, as decisions made today may shape international stability for years to come.